Congressman, Republican, 1st District, Virginia, and also a candidate for governor 2017. Congressman Wittman, great to have you.
John, it's great to be with you this morning. Lots of things happening.
Now, look, you served in the State House for a long time. I think this compromise deal that Republicans made with the Maxter, I think it's great. What say you?
Well, obviously the devil's in the details. I would like to see, exactly how the restriction on those folks buying a firearm based on those restraining orders. It sounds plausible. I do like the idea of a voluntary opportunity for folks' background checks at gun shows that doesn't keep people from coming in trying to sell their guns there. It doesn't impede the flow of commerce. So, on the surface, it sounds like a reasonable, thoughtful deal. As you said, I'm always concerned about operations by the court and due process for individuals, especially in losing, which is a fundamental right, that Second Amendment right. So that would be one that I would want to look at a little bit further, but it certainly sounds like something that has some reasonableness to it. And as you said, there is the Virginia way, and that is we want to make sure we're thoughtful and reasonable about things. And as always, we always find these things out. And John, you especially see that in Congress. The devil is in the details. So I hope that they've thought this thing through to make sure that any provisions there are always deferring towards preserving people's fundamental Second Amendment rights. But it sounds, I like the idea of rescinding this ridiculous reciprocity order that the Attorney General put out. As you know, I've been on a bill ever since I've been in Congress to make reciprocity a national issue, and that is
right.
All 50 states recognize other states' concealed carry permits. That just makes sense. So I'm glad to see that that's repealed. That's an excellent thing, and it sounds like those other provisions are reasonable and thoughtful provisions. But as always, looking at the details, I hope all the details have been sewn up on this.
So, Congressman, nobody's in session right now in Washington, right? The Speaker, because of the storm, sent everybody home. The government was actually shut down for, a day and a half, almost 2 days. But, the sky didn't fall.
Well, as Benjamin Franklin once said, the nation is safest when Congress is not in session. And that was certainly the case this week. Although we have a number of things coming up, and Speaker Ryan, I think, is going to have a very, very aggressive agenda, John, in the coming months. As you know, he is very much on a pro-growth agenda to make sure we get our economy back on track, to get government out of the way, to really be aggressive with that, and to do things like put out there a bill as an alternative to Obamacare. I think we have to do those things, and in making sure too that we're putting our ideas out there. It's one thing to be the loyal opposition and say we don't agree with the other side, but as you know, our party is always best when we are a party of ideas, and you can see that going back to the Reagan days, and I think that's where we need to be. We need to have a national dialogue about what direction does our country need to go in, whether it's national security, and the Speaker is going to be highlighting that, and we're going to be very busy on House Armed Services doing those things. You know that I've talked about it as well as others, making sure we get an authorization of the use of military force. You saw just this week Mitch McConnell on the Senate side fast-tracking a bill to do that. The Speaker is committed to do that on the House side. We need to have a full and vigorous debate on an authorization of the use of military force. We need to have a clear definition about what the strategy is to defeat ISIS. Those are things I think that we have to do, and I'm excited about having the opportunity to get in there and debate those issues and to lay out what our ideas are to change the direction of this nation. That's what we need to do. I think in us doing that, John, I think that also drives the debate at the national level as our presidential candidates are out there having their discussions with folks out there asking for their votes.
Congressman, what did you think of two things? The debate last night, if you saw any of it. I only saw an hour of it, and then I went to bed. And do you think Trump made a miscalculation in telling Fox to stick it?
I always think it's a mistake not to engage voters. I think they look at that and are not happy with somebody not providing to them information that they need to make decisions about voting. So I do think Donald Trump missed an opportunity. One thing I noticed, I did have a chance to watch some of last night's debate. One thing I noticed is that the dynamic there, John, was so different. You rarely saw the candidates there going after each other. They were going after Hillary Clinton like a laser beam. So I thought that was good, and drawing the contrast between where they stand, where Hillary Clinton stands, and even Bernie Sanders, and not so much going after each other. I think that's a smart move. And you notice last night, too, I thought it was noticeably absent. And very, very few comments about Donald Trump's absence. So there's a very, very different dynamic in last night's debate versus the others. And I think that gave people a window in to see these candidates in a different light than they would have if Donald Trump were there. And Donald Trump is, I believe, really brought to light the frustration, the deep frustration that people feel about their government, the things that are not happening, the things that he's willing to bring to light as part of that. So I think that's been very, very helpful. Last night's debate was a kind of a new view into the other candidates, so it gave the other candidates an opportunity to present their points of view in a very, very different environment. So I think it was helpful. If I were in Donald Trump's shoes, I would have not avoided the debate. I would have been there regardless of the situation and how he felt about how he's being treated by Fox. I mean, he's certainly going to face a lot of other very challenging situations if he's elected president, much greater than a perceived slight or perceived imbalance in how he's treated by Megyn Kelly.
So, look, I'm going to be in Iowa Monday and Tuesday, Congressman. I think Trump is going to win Iowa. I think Sanders is going to win going away. Those are my predictions. But look, if Trump wins Iowa, he's got a big lead in New Hampshire, South Carolina. He's got a shot. He might run the table. So
and that's very, very likely. You heard Ted Cruz say the same thing, that momentum coming out of Iowa and then New Hampshire going into South Carolina and then what are called used to be called Super Tuesday, now the SEC primaries.
Right.
There's a lot of momentum there, and as you know, in the political realm, especially in political races, momentum is sometimes the majority of the game. So yes, it does give him tremendous advantage going into those SEC primaries by winning Iowa and New Hampshire. And of course, if he does that, it'll be quite a story.
So if it becomes inevitable that he's the nominee, what is going to be the level, of hand-wringing that goes on in your caucus in Congress? Are people just going to figure, well, it is what it is, or are they going to think, well, my goodness, this is going to be another 1964 Goldwater debacle? Just give our audience a general sense of what people in your caucus are saying about the potential of a Trump nomination.
Well, I think there are more and more people realizing that it's a definite possibility. And on the other side, you look, there's a long way to go. These things are very, very dynamic. But I do think you have to place in your mind that Donald Trump could be our nominee. And if he is, he's gone through the process and he's been duly nominated, and we have to stand behind him as our candidate. Now, the way people do that will be up to them, and there will be some that will support him wholeheartedly. There'll probably be some that will be lukewarm in their support, and there may be some that just sit on their hands. I think those types of efforts, though, hurt us. I think, once your nominee is decided upon, the thing you have to do then is to engage your nominee and say, we want you to be aware and thoughtful of these particular issues. I can tell you, whoever our nominee is, Donald Trump or otherwise, I will be having conversations with them about national security and the things that I think we need to do as a nation to make sure we protect our interests around the world, and things we need to do to rebuild our military. So I think the important thing to do is to get behind our candidate, to make sure that folks there that may have disagreements with them or different viewpoints is to engage them and say, I want you to understand my viewpoint, and I'd like to see you reflect that, at least in some fashion, in how they pursue their candidacy towards the presidency. So I think you have to look at it from a positive standpoint. You can look at it in a woe is me standpoint and
right.
Try to look at differences, but I think you have to look at what you have in common.
All right, you're right. See, that's the attitude that you just outlined that I think everybody should have. That's what I try to do, is let's find out what we have in common, and then go from there. Because you can always find something you have in common, and you got to get who you backed. Look, it's always emotional when you back candidates. I remember, the last cycle, I was a very big Newt Gingrich advocate. He was my congressman. I covered him for a long time. I thought he would have been a brilliant president. And yeah, I mean, when he got beat, there's a time period there where you just got to go and sulk or whatever I did for a couple weeks. I sulked. And, but then, look, reality sets in, and it became, you want Romney or do you want Obama, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that becomes reality. I mean, it is what it is. And
Sure.
so you kind of fall in line with that. But yeah, there's a sulking stage that goes on. I went through it, and finally my wife had to hit me over top of the head, told me to get over it. So we got that. This just in, Congressman, I got a couple more minutes. This just in, the government saying that the economy grew this quarter by 0.07%. Wow.
Yeah, wow. That's definitely an underperforming economy. And, John, as you know, there's so much economic potential out there, much of it tied up in people having uncertainty about where this nation is going. They also understand the problems with overregulation, the cost associated with that, the uncertainty that surrounds that. I think there's so much potential for us to unlock. That's why I am excited and cautiously optimistic about our agenda and promoting economic growth. The pro-growth agenda is really what we need to do in this nation to unleash the potential that we know is there. And think about this, even in light of our poorly performing economy, we're still the strongest economy in the world. Just think about what we could do while China is having their deep problems. Russia the same way, with energy prices being down. Our two main adversaries there, strategic adversaries, big economic adversary being China. Think about the opportunity we have to now step way out in front of them if we would just unleash the potential that we have here in the country. And there's so many things that we can do to do that. And most of it surrounds just getting government out of the way, letting our small businesses grow, making sure they have opportunities to grow, and making sure government doesn't impede the things that they know how to do on a daily basis. And whether it's modernizing the tax code to make sure it actually encourages growth, investment, and savings, or whether it's releasing the burden of regulations on these businesses so they don't have that cost burden to deal with. And I'm not saying do away with all regulations. Many of the regulations have a purpose, but by any measure, we have gone so far overboard. And I hear from businesses every day that say, Rob, here's a regulation I have to deal with. I can't see any kind of utility, any kind of benefit to this yet. I can show you clearly the cost to me. And with there not being any perceived benefit, it really is puzzling to them. And they say, what are we going to do to turn this around? So I think today's economic numbers is another stark reminder of the things that we have to do to turn this economy around.
If we don't turn the economy around, Congressman Wittman, nothing else is going to matter. And when you get growth numbers like this, and, we're even suspect when we get these numbers out because we know there's been cooking the books with, the jobs numbers. We know those are false. They're not a reflection of the many people that have dropped out of the job market. But, when you get, hey, last quarter the economy grew 0.07, it's like, oh, my goodness. I mean, we're just going nowhere. So hopefully your agenda with Paul Ryan, I'm hopefully, Congressman Wittman, you're going to make me a Ryan believer. Right now I'm a doubter. Just make me a believer, and that'll be happy. Congressman, we're out of time. We want to thank Congressman Rob Wittman, Dr. Wittman, for being with us. Also want to let everybody know he's a candidate for governor. He's going to that'll be in 2017. Most likely decided at a convention. I can't wait to see your convention speech. And I'm out of time, but Rob Wittman got to be congressman by winning one of these conventions.
Yes.
That's why I think he's the man to beat. You heard it here first on the John Fredericks Radio Network.